Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's your girl Wilma and this is Wednesdays con Wilma. Today we will be reviewing Take My Hand by Dolen Perkins Valdez and we are going to get into it. So if you like what you're seeing so far, please like, follow, comment, and share and engage with me. And let's get into the content. Before we get into the review, definitely wanted to go and put out a disclaimer regarding a lot of the very heavy content that is in the book, Take My Hand. It follows women's productive rights, abortion, eugenics, the right to choose, in various aspects of different lives, of class, of differently abled. And it has these really, really tough conversations. I know for me, it was a very somber book to read. It was really, really hard to get into in the aspect of, I know it's a piece of nonfiction, but there is real life inspiration behind it. So with further ado, if you are interested in hearing the review for Take My Hand, please do, and understand that these are very tough and difficult conversations that are going to be had throughout the book. So picture this. It's 1973. You're a 20-something, college-educated young girl, and you're going to start your first big girl job. You have all of the naivete of thinking that you are going to just do well in this field because you have some experience from this. Your father has his own practice. You come from a family that's medically inclined and well-versed. Your aunt is a psychologist and your grandfather used to be a doctor as well. And then you get into the work and you're like, what the hell is going on? What did I get myself into? Introducing Sybil Townsend. She is a nurse working in the family clinic in Montgomery, Alabama in 1973. The heels of already medical malpractice and medical and ethical issues from the Tuskegee experiment has just came out about letting syphilis run rampant for 40 years in African American men. And that case is going through and gathering information all in the background, right? So that's already a real life happening situation. 1973, Roe versus Wade, the landmark case of women's reproductive rights have just been decided on. So now there is a conversation of abortion, access to it. What does that look like? And who gets to decide what women are able to have children, have families, and move forward with that right or that privilege or that luxury, depending on who you ask. I had to rely on my notes because there was a lot of information in the book. The real life case inspired the book Rolfe versus Weinberger in 1973. On behalf of the Rolfe sisters, a 12 and a 14-year-old young lady exposed widespread sterilization abuse funded by the government. An estimated 100,000 and 150,000 poor people were sterilized annually by federally funded programs. From this case, it is now required that doctors are required to obtain informed consent by the Department of Health Education, or as referred to as HUE. This definitely got me stir crazy. I've always known about various cases regarding forced sterilizations within the Native American community, specifically also in my own background of being Puerto Rican, and the realization of La Operación. La Operación happened between the years of 1943 to 1974. I wanted to do this quote that while I was reading and recognizing that these are all probably happenings around the same time. So it says, by 1974, tubal ligation became so ubiquitous on the island, over a third of its women had already received La Operación, giving Puerto Rico the highest sterilization rate in the world. Quote by Kiara Alegría Hughes, and this is from the article Our Mothers Too, Reckoning with My Abuela's Coerced Sterilization, and that publication is for The Nation, so I'll drop that link below as well if you wanted to do further reading. But it definitely got me thinking, like, again, how much is it new? How much have we changed? How much of this women's rights issue is just repetitive? Take My Hand follows Sybil Townsend, the Williams sisters, both Erica and India, Erica being the oldest, India being differently abled. She is described as not being able to speak, and unfortunately in that time frame it is an indicator of lack of intelligence. And as you read, you'll realize she is differently able. She is super intelligent. Unfortunately, she just cannot speak, and due to lack of access, it's really been hard for her to express. Had she been modern day, maybe she gone through Head Start, we would have gotten her some different resources. But in this 1973 timescape that she's in, and it's also a glimpse of seeing how differently abled people were treated. It's just this castaway of a throwaway of a person, unfortunately, for lack of better terms. They're just like, oh yeah, she just grunts or points if she likes something, versus later down the line of the story, when she finally does get a resource, her intelligence is able to blossom in a very beautiful way. And then Mace, their father, their grandmother, Mrs. Williams, unfortunately, their mother, Constance, had passed away. So when Sybil reaches this case of theirs, her patients, she's able to see the disarray that they find themselves. Mace is a sharecropper, and they live in what they're described as a shanty, which is like a little shack, and it's in disarray. And she is essentially a community health worker, community nurse. She's supposed to go there, check on them, give them the Depo-Provera shot, and move on and check off that she's done this. When she realizes that they're so young, and further realizes that they haven't even been menstruating, it opens this can of worms for her as to what am I doing and why are we providing that? Further down the line, Depo-Provera is really new medication around this time, and we really don't know the full effects in the story. And so she's really, really having a tough time settling, administering this drug to the girls. Essentially, she stops, which is against the rules, quote unquote, in her job description. Sybil becomes very, very intertwined with the Williamson family. So much so that me and social services was just like, girl, these boundaries are being crossed. What are you doing? This is not what you do. Like, I get you want to help, but you are really, really just crossing a lot of lines in a certain way. For instance, she enlists her mother to help get them into, I guess you can consider like low income housing around this time. It's not really called like projects. So it's not really called like the projects. And so she like moves them in. She gets secondhand furniture. She finds a way for Mace to leave the sharecropping gig and get a job at the pickle factory. And she's doing all these things and has not had stopped to really ask the family, like, there's a lot of transition. Are they ready for it? Are they prepared? I mean, granted, yes, they may have want better, but these are very big steps for a huge family, for a family that's still very much grieving the loss of the matriarch, right? So she means well, and there's a lot of that theme throughout the book, whether it is the nurses who work there who mean well, whether it's Sybil herself, or whether it's her mean-ass boss, Margaret Seeger, which I could not stop to be like, is that a parallel to Margaret Sanger, which is the quote-unquote activist for birth control or for eugenics as well, depending on what side of history you see her as. But she's just this, runs a tight ship and expects them to simply like just follow orders, do not question what's happening here, and is very meticulous with everything. And there is a centralized theme of belief that they're all doing quote unquote good. They are, for lack of a better words, a lot of belief that these women, they're providing a huge relief to these women who are having children whom they may not be able to take care of, or they would be sexually active anyway. So a lot of assumptions are happening, and definitely could relate to earlier parts of my career in social services, where there was a lot of decision making for folks. And it's like, although you may have seen similar pieces of these cases, this is an individual and deserves an eyes and ears of an individual person to take on their case and give them the necessary help that we're supposed to provide, right? All in all, Sybil definitely is, from a completely different station in life. Her parents are, her mom's an artist, her father has his own practice, her aunt's a psychologist, her grandfather used to be a doctor, so she's definitely able to access a lot of things. She was even gifted a brand new car that she doesn't want to drive because she doesn't want the illusion of looking like, oh, she got it. So sometimes she borrows her parents' car to get to work. So all of these little things of recognizing, like, you have things and you don't want to look as if you do, as a means to being able to just kind of like camouflage in. Furthermore, as we get into it, there's other like secondary characters. Like there's her childhood little boo, Ty, and then it's Val, one of her other friends. And then of course later on, when there's a major situation that happens in the story where the girls unfortunately are sterilized against their will, Margaret and another nurse come to the home, and being as though that both Mrs. Williams and Mace are illiterate, they are signing off on this consent form, but they really did not know what they were doing. Margaret catches on that the Depo-Provera shot wasn't given, and takes it upon herself to take the girls and get them forcibly sterilized. In that is the climax of the story. Then they enlist in Ty, who's her childhood sweetheart. They had a relationship, but unfortunately, Sybil is also dealing with the fact that she has had an abortion not too long ago from Ty. And she chose herself, she chose her career, she chose the ability to do that. And they really didn't have this conversation about it. It was just kind of like a decision she made. And so there's a look into what does it look like when you make a decision like that by yourself. Ty's also reeling in this hurt. They both won't have this conversation, and she just decided to do it. And so there's this like underlying motherhood and this maternalistic like protection that she has from the girls that also stems from the guilt from her having an abortion. She's super close, too close to the family, so much so that other people around her kind of like drop these little breadcrumbs, like, don't you think, you know, you're doing a lot? What's going on? Like, did they ask to do this? So I wanted to read a quote that shows this like realization that she has definitely entered a world where there should have been boundaries. So this is during the case is happening. They've enlisted a young lawyer, Mr. Lou Feldman, and he's the one who's taking care of the case. And it's this thing where she's also grappling with the guilt of administering the shot to the girls. The only thing I wish, he said, which is Mace, is that they had never butchered my girls. I ask God all the time why that happened. What did I done wrong? Maybe I should have took another wife. Maybe if they had a mama, it might have not happened. I flinched when he said that. I tried to be a mother to them. I had tried to do what his wife would have done. That is a major cross of boundaries. Like, granted, I know that you care for the girls, but you are not their mom. And so there is this like there's this pulled in recognition of, yes, she loves them, as we've all probably have loved our patients and our clients to some extent, but we have to have those clear boundaries, so much so that him wishing that their mother was still here like affects her so gravely. So she starts to realize like, okay, I'm very, very in deep. Her and Mace also have like this will they, won't they situation going on throughout the book, but it's definitely this story that's unraveling between 1973 and present day 2016. Sybil has gone off in present day 2016. She's a doctor, I believe she's a surgeon, and she ends up adopting a child of her own because after the abortion and what happened to the girls, she swore off motherhood. Like, this really affected her and stood with her. And it wasn't until later of getting therapy and recognizing like, I have to do something with this because I am stuck, that at 48 she she adopts a child, and that is the catalyst of going backwards of this like retelling of oral history of giving her daughter like, hey, this is where you come from. I look at Erica and India as family, so you need to also understand and inherit this family history as well. On their trip down, she makes visits to Val and Alicia, which were nurses that she worked with, and with Ty, along with Erica and India, who unfortunately in present day India is diagnosed with cancer. And of course, the guilt hits Sybil again. Was this tied to the medication that we gave her back in 1973? So there is a lot of like a men's trip that's happening here. She's definitely trying to go back. She hasn't been back in years. She's actually relocated to Memphis, if I can remember correctly in the book. So there's a lot of guilt that's happening, and a lot of like unburdening of that guilt with Sybil as she's trying to tell her daughter like, this was my history, this is what happened, this is how I became to be, because she's very successful now, a very successful doctor, and this is like I said, it's a shared history of each other. At first with the case, they're thinking it's locally. At best, they can bring the clinic to some type of reckoning. Once Lou gets the case, it's a realization that this is happening on a national level. So much so she gets the other current nurses at the clinic to kind of do a little digging, and they find that that year alone, 11 girls were sterilized from the clinic. And then they get to see that across the state of Alabama, it's a widespread practice. Lou recognizes that it's happening in California, Chicago, Boston. So they actually take a trip to Washington, D.C. to talk to some Congress people and tell the girls' testimony. That's where they brought the case over to a federal level. The case, I was on like, oh my gosh, will they, won't they? What's going on? It was so vividly written, and that's a testament to the author. Like, everything was super clear. Like, if I closed my eyes and this was being read to me, I can see this all through. It was beautiful. Like, if this is ever adapted into a movie, I just can see these things play out so vividly. So much so that the case is then passed over to a judge that isn't like the best, you know, when it comes to like race relations. So there's just so much like heightened drama. Essentially, they are awarded and found that they did wrong, and that now moving forward there is a level of informed consent that needs to happen in that case. But it's still like a bittersweet celebration. Erica ends up leaving and being missing for a couple of days, and there's this realization when she comes back. She had stood out over at where they used to live on the farm, and she's like, I don't want to live here anymore. I don't want to be the spectacle. I just don't feel like I'm happy or home here. And eventually they move with a friend, and it really hurts. It really hurts Sybil that like the case is done, there's this finality, and like people are moving on because she has become so engrossed. Like, she left the clinic, she's not working there anymore. This has become her life. She goes to the court every day while it's in proceedings. She's helping Lou in the background as much as she can, but essentially she doesn't take up another job. Her dad's looking at her like, girl, this is all you do all day. Again, another reminder that you're way too close to this. Like, you've done, like, there's this, like, you've done enough. You've brought this forward. Now we have to like trust in the courts. And then it's this like not knowing what to do next for her. They're all like, hey, you should go be a doctor. Her friend for her 23rd birthday gives her like the MCAT book for her to study. She's just like, yeah, I can't deal with this right now. Like, I don't know what to do. So essentially people have to decide this for her. So the family moves with a family friend called Nellie over in Rockford, Alabama, and this really devastates her and hurts her in a way of like, she recognized like, I love these girls, I love them, and being away from them is going to hurt me. But she recognizes the bittersweet of letting that go and letting them go. because everybody has to move on with their lives. They cannot continue to live in the thick of this every day. Like, it's just not as therapeutic as she thinks it is. I wanted to get back to her mom. There is an allusion or alluding to like her mom's not well. Like, she tends to like sleep in all day sometimes, or paints, and this like recognition that there's some level of depression there. So much so that her aunt has to come down from Memphis and be like, this isn't working. Like, y'all clearly see she's not doing well. Y'all haven't done anything. Y'all didn't call me. And it's such, I remember reading it and being like, you are so engrossed in helping this other family that you did not see even in your own home the cry for help from your mother, and her depression being in full throttle, and just kind of like that conversation of like, we try to save everyone else out because we either think someone else has her, but she definitely looks at it like, well, daddy had her and he was taking care of her. And it's like her aunt has to be like, this is depression. This is full-blown depression. Like, y'all all had to take care of her, not just your dad, and your dad works. So she's not being taken care of in the way that she does. Ross ends up taking her to Memphis and really like implementing some practices for her that really gets her mom back on her feet. But it was just a really like cool, like, I don't want to use cool, but it was really like a telling sign. Like, you're so busy trying to save out something outside of your home, you're not recognizing what's being manifested in your home, and how that often happens a lot in our own lives, right? It's easier to help someone else than to help what's going on in our own roof. When Sybil goes back, she ends up realizing that the head nurse, Margaret Seeger, has passed away, but her daughter or her granddaughter works at the hospital. So she calls, she looks up, she gets like a spurts of boldness, and she's basically like, I'm going to talk to her. I want to know if she spoke about this case, if she spoke about me, if she spoke about these girls. And again, it is that recognition of like, are we doing well? Of course we did well. She didn't mean for this to happen. So her granddaughter, they meet at the cafeteria after the big like, you know who I am, this is what's going on. Her granddaughter goes, hold on. Turns the page. She goes, I mean, Mama was trying to do the right thing, right? That's what I always wanted to believe. It's why I always wanted to reach out to you. I wanted to ask, were you able to forgive her? Forgive who? Your mother? Well, yes. I stuttered, no, to be honest, no. Mama wasn't a Klan member or nothing like that. She was a Confederate, or she wasn't a slaver. She was just a nurse trying to do the right thing at a difficult time. I mean, it was the year of Roe versus Wade, for goodness sake. It was. She wasn't a monster, right? She was a nice lady, nice to blacks. I mean, she did work at the clinic. She did. She wasn't no racist, right? Please tell me, Dr. Townsend, what you thought of her. Why was my mama a racist? The woman's eyes were desperate and pleading. I twirl the empty coffee cup between my fingers, and I want to give this kind woman the relief she craves. I have carried this burden for so long that I understand her anguish. We are bound together by this tragedy. As much my guilt as I have carried over the years, I know, with discernment of a woman my age, that my pain does not rival what Linda Seeger inflicted upon her own family. So, excuse me, Linda. I made the juxtaposition of Margaret Sanger. Her name was Linda Seeger. So she basically is like pleading like, oh, please tell me my mom was a monster. Yeah, she was. She was a big ass monster. But again, it's this history retelling that like, you know, she was trying to do the best thing. She thought she was doing the best thing. Like, please tell me that she wasn't this awful thing. I mean, she didn't own slaves. She wasn't a Klan member. But it's like, this is the conversation of this institutionalized racism, of how these things seep in so deeply. Like, she may not be calling people the N-word, but she out here tying their tubes because she doesn't believe that they have the right to procreate for whatever reason. And so basically civil ends up like just getting up and being like, all right, girl, this conversation is over. But it is this central theme of who did right by people, especially in the medical field, right? What is that Hippocratic oath that you are supposed to take and state that you do no harm? And the realization that these are conversations that are happening in present day with the mortality rate of African American women. I mean, not just long ago in ICE, there have been sterilizations. So again, this is not some distant in the past conversation of reproductive rights. It is still very much happening with the overturn of Roe v. Wade on a federal level, leaving it up to the states in 2022. There is even more of incentive to have these conversations. And Take My Hand does this very hauntingly beautiful, because it keeps you asking, what would you do in these situations? How would you have been? Would you have been a Civil? Would you have been a Val? Would you have been an Alicia of a type of nurse? Would you have questioned what was going on? Would you have been a Linda and thought, yeah, of course, I'm going to carry out this federally mandated program and do this job, and that's what it is. Who gets to decide these choices, and who gets to take them further away from you? Sybil ends up visiting Erica in India as India is working through her illness, and they're in her home, and she gets them, the wrap up, the update, and it pains her to let her know, like, yes, I did become a mom, I adopted, because she also recognizes, like, who am I to have that conversation and have that update when that was always taken away from you, not just biologically, but because of your economic status. She recognizes how difficult it would be if they even tried and wanted to be a mother. And what does that do for folks who are in different economic classes? She states, I've exercised a choice that has been a powerful thing, even a single mother. The system favors me because of my status as a doctor. For Erica in India, the adoption process would have been more difficult. The judge scrutinizes you more closely if you're poor, disabled, unmarried. I am still just as aware as ever that this work has to be done in the world. She eventually just realizes why is she even there, because Erica asks her, like, after all this time, why are you here? And she's like, I'm not trying to pity them and I'm not trying to let them know, but she essentially feels like she has to apologize to them because she never really got the chance to do so as a child. And they're like, you don't have to do that. Like, it wasn't your fault. And like, they let her know of all the good things that she done, because like she showed them how to be proper hygiene. She's given them so many other great memories that they're like, that doesn't have to happen. And like, they kind of give her that like title, like, your family, we get it, we love you, you've loved us, and we know that we were loved by you, and you did not do this onto us with this perpetual belief to cause harm. If I was to rate Take My Hand and give it like a 1 to 5 star, I would definitely give it a 5 star. It was definitely a beautiful book to read. It was hard to read with the concepts and the sitting with yourself and thinking about like that it's not an everyday problem as a woman, those intersectionalities. And it's not this like fairy tale that you're gonna get like the book didn't end with the win in court, right? Like, yay, we did it. Like, it was this realization of this is still something they're going to sit with for the rest of their lives. This is something that was done across the country. This is real life. And unfortunately, yeah, we may have rewritten a wrong in court, but they still sit with that heaviness of what was done to them, that harm. She even states in the book, like, they never got like a civil compensation for it. So it was just this court, that was it. Nothing else was done. That they won in court and that was it. And everybody went on amongst their lives. But I would definitely give this a 5-star rating. Go out and get it. Go out and read it. It's an excellent book. I definitely would love to read more from Dolen. And her writing is exquisite. Like, I absolutely love reading this book, and it was such a page turner. Like, I really had to like put the book down and do other things because I was just running through it so quickly. It's 52 chapters, I believe, and it's in 3 parts. So definitely go out, recommend, read it. And as always, if you have not done so, go get your library card from your public library. Many times you can apply online. Go out there and read. This has been my review of Take My Hand. I definitely will recommend this book, and as always, read what entertains you. Find the genres, find the topics, and look for what entertains you, and that's how you can get into reading. Join me next week as we get into The Whispers, as this has been a book that has been asked about a lot within my DMs of like, I can't wait till you get this, and I can't wait to get into this because this looks like a big white mess, suburbia, HBO type of Big Little Lies conversation book piece. So let's get into it next week. And as always, thank you for spending some time this Wednesday con Wilma. Ciao.